to the cloud. Yes, so welcome. And yes, thank you so very much to all the contributors for sharing your beautiful and inspiring work. I know we all are artists and writers and creators in our own right with many publications and works out there. But to me, this kind of enterprise, this kind of collective artistic work, such as this anthology, has extraordinary value. It is truly a community. It has great value to me because it creates communities of thought and art and spirit. And our anthology, Voices on the Move, by and about refugees, is now so relevant. It does not lose its relevance, unfortunately, sadly, but it is something, it is our little gift to the universe and to the world and to this very troubled world of ours that we are giving. And I want us to give you a few logistical points about how this is going to go. I am asking you kindly to mute yourselves every time somebody else is reading so that there is no background noises. I can also mute you if I see that I've forgotten to do that. And I'm recording this session so that we have a record of this, and so we can also continue using it as a promotional material. Welcome also to Robert Gray, our wonderful editor, without whom this book would not have been possible, and who is the editor extraordinaire. What he has done and the beauty of the book as a work of art. And now please try to keep to the suggested time of 3 minutes so that we can all read, and so that we don't get too tired, and also so that we can have a little bit of a discussion and the Q&A session at the end. Again, thank you all for joining us from so many corners of the world and of the United States. Thank you all for your contributions. And now I am going to let Roxanna Kazan speak. And also I want to thank you, Roxanna, for being such an incredible co-editor. It has been an absolute joy and inspiration to work with you. And she has done all this while caring for a small baby. It shows how women can do everything. And this is, however, Roxanna and my baby, and you're all of our baby, and the beautiful baby it is. Thank you so much.
And can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you, Dominica. I completely echo your feelings. I want to welcome everybody also and thank you. It's amazing that we could be together despite time differences, especially those of you who are making sacrifices by being here at midnight. Khaled called me about 3 hours earlier from Djibouti wanting to join, not realizing the time difference. So hopefully he can make it right now as well. I wanted to say that it's a cold and windy day in Oklahoma City, where I am today, which makes me think about those who have precarious housing conditions, those who live in detention centers, in camps, or those who are homeless. In particular, I'm thinking about refugees and immigrants and migrants with or without conclusive legal documents that could, empower them ideally to access assistance, particularly as COVID cases are spiking, especially in Oklahoma. I'm not sure exactly about your places. Racial injustice, remains unsolved. Are no longer functioning the way we used to know that they did. And so this book seems to be even more meaningful today than it was when Dominica and I started to think about it in 2018. So thank you for making it possible. Thank you to Solis Press, who unflinchingly took up this project. Robert, you were amazing. Thank you to our wonderful contributors. I am absolutely amazed by your work and by your willingness and ease of collaborating on this project. Thank you to our readers and to the audiences who came on here today. I feel like if I tear up, my glasses are gonna fog up and I can't read. So hopefully that won't happen. as we officially launched this anthology, we wanted to offer you a taste of what it is by inviting our contributors to give a short reading or presentation, 2 to 3 minutes. Dominica and I won't really say too much about the contributors because we would actually like you to look them up and to look up and read their biographies at the end of our beautiful anthology. So we're going to start with the readers, and then we will open up the floor for Q&A. Please, if you don't read, mute yourself. So as a reader, you can either spend your 2 to 3 minutes to read, or you can choose to comment. I know some of the contributors created art, and so they can comment on the importance of their art or the importance of this anthology. Use the time however you want to spend it, and thank you.
Yes, and you can also share the screen if you wish to. If you have visual art, feel free to share the screen. So we'll take turns introducing each.
Maybe we should, I'm sorry to interrupt, but maybe we should ask Robert to say just a few things. Thank you. It's probably midnight in the UK.
You have to unmute, Robert. Robert, unmute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you very much. No, it's not too bad here. It's only 10 o'clock, but we were very excited because we only had the internet installed in this property today. So it's amazing I can actually speak to you all. But I'd just like to thank everybody for their contributions to the book. And it's such an important book. And I'm so pleased that we're able to publish it. And it's been a very difficult time for us all with the COVID restrictions and everything. But so I'm very pleased it's out there. But once again, thank you for everybody, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody and listening to them to talk about their contributions. So thanks once again.
All right, and also to let you know, you can write in chat if you have comments, if you want to share some of your thoughts or feelings or ideas as the readings go along. So we're going to start with Marjorie Agosin. Marjorie, go ahead. Marjorie, are you there?
I was mute.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
can
we
you hear
can.
me?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Thank you, Dominica, Roxanna, Robert, and everybody who contributed for the brevity of times. I will read this poem in both Spanish and English because it's brief. Tristeza. En tu mirada moraba la tristeza. Tristeza color sepia. Tristeza color ámbar. Tristeza de las sombras. Pensaba que en ella tu mirada cabía todo el mar. No era azulada tu tristeza como el mar Pacífico que te recibió, tampoco gris como el Atlántico, era otra. Era tristeza de la ausencia, tristeza de los que no tienen país, ni lenguas, ni hermanas con quien salir a pasear. Regina estaba en los campos de ceniza, la llamabas. Hacías de todos los parques su tumba. In your gaze dwelt sadness, sadness the color of sepia, sadness the color of amber, sadness of shadows. I thought your gaze could encompass the ocean. Your sadness was not the azure of the Pacific that welcomed you, nor the gray of the Atlantic. It was another type of sadness, the sadness of absence, the sadness of those without a country, without tongues, without sisters with whom to stroll. Regina was in the camp of ashes. You called to her. You made every park her tomb. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. You have time to read one more if you want.
That's fine. No. I'll give
Beautiful.
time to others. And
So beautiful. Okay, next we're going to hear from Christina Beijan.
Thank you so much, Dominica and Roxana, for inviting me to be part of this. It's super meaningful because I started writing plays in my journals growing up, and I got to the point where I didn't think I could write plays anymore. And then Dominica and Roxana invited me to write a play. And so this is a personal triumph, and it was also a very meaningful invitation because it gave me the chance to write my father's story. He fled communist Romania in 1969, and he's an incredible person. And so I finally got to write down all of his adventures and also hilarious anecdotes about growing up in North Carolina with an immigrant father. So this monologue is from one of his daughters, and the scene is entitled "The Mean Streets of Durham, NC." So our dad may have driven us to school every morning, but you think he drove to work from there? You gotta be kidding me. He drove back to our house and left the car for my mom to use. Then he would walk to work. Yes, from our neighborhood, Forest Hills, to the university. He had this golf ball that he would bounce his whole walk. He said it helped him think. So he walked miles and miles, I don't know how many, lasted an hour, I think, to get there, and the same exact path back. He walked through neighborhoods that had nothing in common. Most people would think it was most dangerous, his daily routine. He had this friend who lived on the corner of one of the windy intersections. This was a much older man, Southern, a very thick accent, had served in the military. I remember my dad taking us to this man's birthday party one year. Everyone there was so Southern. We were curious about this invitation. Who is this guy, Dad? Girls, I talk to him every day. He is my friend. And that was that. When my dad's friend died, I could tell that my dad was going through something, but typical, you know, he didn't talk about it. Maybe this was how it was for him his whole life. First Romania, then Durham, friends always falling off the map. For a man in a culture that really needs friends, this must have been hard. But he always had his science, right? He always had his work, right? The thing I find most notable about these walks is that my dad became a local celebrity. Durham doesn't have sidewalks. Everyone at school would say, "So that's your dad?" Yes, my dad was the only human being walking around Durham, and he was useful. Before GPS, how did people find their way around? They stopped their cars, rolled down their windows, and asked my dad. His adopted city became a map in his brain. My sister calls it spatial memory. He walked until his back couldn't take it anymore, so for something crazy like 20 years, now he swims, whoa, and that's another story. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next we have Jasmine Darcy.
I was typing, I loved it. So I got as far as love. Thank you so much, Christina. And thank you, everybody. It's just such a pleasure to see everybody's faces. I have a short essay in here, and I'll just read the first couple of paragraphs from it. It's a piece called "Home is Where They Let You Live." Where is your home? The consular officer asked me. I was 13 years old. My parents and I had left Iran 8 years earlier, at the onset of the 1979 revolution. Since then, they'd bought a house and a business, a small roadside motel in California. I'd gone to school and learned to speak English. Then, on a summer trip to visit my mother's Iranian relatives in Germany, I made the mistake of calling America my home. The trouble started when my mother handed me the visa forms. My father had stayed behind to run the motel, and even though my mother had learned enough English to get by, at moments like this, when it was just the two of us, I was still the translator and all-purpose intermediary between us and them. I took the clipboard and began filling in the papers. My parents and I were in the United States legally, but since we traveled outside the country, my mother's visa would need to be renewed. It was a standard procedure. We wouldn't have encountered any difficulties if, under the line asking where our home was, I hadn't written America. You sure about that? The officer asked me, her pen pointed at my adolescent cursive. When I nodded, she retreated to a back room. A few minutes later, she returned to inform us that our applications had been denied. We would not be able to return to America because we'd expressed an intention to stay in the country permanently. And it's continued, so thank you for listening to that bit of it.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. This is such a powerful essay story. Next, we're going to hear from Catalina Florescu.
Hi, I was born in Romania and I came here 22 years ago. The piece that I have in this collection is titled Cioc la Tiza and is dedicated to my students, DACA students at Pace University. Unlike what was said yesterday during the last presidential debate, these kids, which later would become students, were not brought into the country by coyotes, but came with their family members. So back to my story, initially I wanted to read a little bit from my piece, but then I decided just to talk a little bit about it. It is dedicated again to my DACA students as well as to my heritage. Unlike international students, DACA students are even more fragile than international students, and I wanted to pay tribute to that. The main story revolves around the character named Alegrias. This is a nickname that his parents gave to him when he was a little boy. He recounts a traumatic event. In the middle of the night, he hears a very loud knock on the door, boom, 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 and then ICE officers came in and abduct his parents. I know this statement is very severe, but I want to stay by it. I want to say it very loud and clear, because imagine this little boy sleeping peacefully in his bed when all of a sudden his whole life is going to change. After that moment, he would be placed in foster care system and he would live with this memory for the rest of his life. Unlike holding a grudge, he decides to become a history professor because he realizes that there are omissions, half-truths, and lies in history textbooks. And he also wants to learn Spanish because his dream is to find his parents one day and reunite with them and converse with them in their native tongue. Like I said in the beginning, this is a play that revolves around DACA students, but also is in part something about myself. As you can tell easily, my English is accented. I am very proud of my English because it has my Balkan roots. But when this main character learns Spanish, he wants to speak in the native tongue of his parents, to pay respect to that, and also to teach those vulnerable, like he was when he was a boy, what it means to be bilingual, what it means to be inclusive. Finally, I chose to nickname Alegrias because in singular, it means joy. In plural, is actually a sweet dish. And the little boy used to make and bake with his parents when they were a family. Because through this organ, tongue, we communicate, but we also experience the bitterness, the sweetness, and everything that lies throughout us. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was great, Catalina. Thank you so much. Our next reader today is Mihaela Moskaliuk.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Dominica and Roxana and everyone. I'm going to read 2 poems from the anthology. The first is Refugee Song. 16 lost at sea, survived at her breast. When her mind tangled in seagrass, lips kept the milk flowing. Dying women, men, ghostling of newborn afloat among damselfish. The shore pushed them back toward lands poisoned by war. The milk ran out of bodies. Father, all you ever did was gorge on my flesh. My belly grew eyes, but the pelvis shrank, thinned by vinegar and grazing nails. What am I to call your hunger? The teeth marks clotted with milk. The shore I barely reached. And the second one, also from Immigrant Model, and I'm sorry, Dominica and Christina, you heard me read this before. Alien Resident, and this is for my mother, whose story is in many ways a typical immigrant story. She spent about 10 years coming to the United States, cleaning houses, cleaning rich people's houses. One day, she was in her 60s by now, called me and said, I'm cleaning this apartment in the Upper East Side, and I'm finding all these toys under the pillows, under the mattress, under the bed, and they don't have any kids. And I realized that she was talking about dildos. And my mother, I tried to explain on the phone what that was. She was totally stunned. She had never heard of that. She did not understand what those things were doing in these people's houses. So the eager beaver in the poem is that. Alien Resident. My mother rescues bitter cherries off Queens Boulevard. She catches and hoists them in the net of her pleated skirt, cradles them to her employer's kitchenette. On a leather bar stool that spins into night, she pits and pits, keeps pace with the vermicular fanfare, bitter blood on the nails, petite castanets cackling in the dry mouth. On the trenches of dawn, crushed flesh dissolves in the sugar bath as she nods on one elbow to the squeals of bedroom doors. She spoons coffee, keeping count aloud, and pours milk for kids' pancakes as instructed with a measuring cup. The perfect scale of her eyes she wastes on homespun sanitizers. 2/3 vinegar, 1/3 peroxide for sinks, counters, her eager beaver, his dumbbells. She jogs through the day in bark slippers, elm embossed with perfectly knived parts. What's she doing here, my mother, in a toddler cot, apron pockets lined with shriveled fruit worms, jars of preserve ticking under the mattress like hand grenades. Thank you.
Thank you, so beautiful, Mihaela. Next, we'll hear from Olga Liveshin.
Hello, everybody. Am I audible? Great. Thank you so much for including my piece. I'm a poet and essayist, and this is a poem I'm going to read. It's the title poem for my collection that came out last year, A Life Replaced, poems with translations from Anna Akhmatova and Vladimir Gendersman. And this is this refugee's way of keeping in touch with whatever's left through translating and writing about translation. Translating a life for OM and MR. Someone spread a blanket of wild buckwheat over a meadow. Someone tucked puffball pillows in each corner of the purple-green sheet. It is summer everywhere, except war. War where it used to be home, and now war by government here. And what does it matter that the meadow seduces the bees in pollen, or me in lines of a poem, or that I hear perfectly good Russian names for plants and translate them into you and me-ish. Take the tea mushroom, the little fox mushrooms and piggies, the early field dweller, the mysterious cheese eater. These words are undocumented here, and the country that sent them erases every syllable with its crimes. Take an under birch mushroom. Anyway, it's a choice edible. Birch bolete in your tongue, on the tongue, the language for falling in love with forests and stories and friends, does not care who's killing whom. Unfortunately, I care. And sitting here by a huge flowering bush, I see no refuge. What languaged fantasy could stop us from being murderous strangers? Would you take a Russian mushroom name, tuck it in your lapel for the brief banquet of life? Does that translate anything else for you? Is this how it works? Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Next, we have Florinda Ruiz.
Okay, here we go. Dominica, did you say that I could share an image? Okay. So
You can share the screen, yes.
Permission.
Go ahead.
I'm going to do that in a minute. So I just want to mention something that hasn't been mentioned, and it is that my contribution has an essay and 4 poems that are accompanying several photographs, some of them of me, some of them of Santi Palacios, who is a photographer I really admire. But another photograph in the book is the cover. So I hope you like the cover, because it's a photograph that I really liked. And when I showed it to wonderful Dominica and Roxana, they say they liked it. And I think it complements the book well. So just so that you know, I am going to just read one of the poems. Let me share the screen. I think Dominica is telling me that I am not, that you disabled it. So whatever you did, you have to retract it. No.
It says that that one participant at a time can share the screen.
Well, can you go into participants and click on the little dots and put host, share host, and then I will be able to.
Also that you can be the host?
No, it's just co-host. I will just be temporarily a co-host, and then I will not do anything. Then you do that in participants. Let me see. Did you do it?
No,
You click under my name, and then you see a blue tab that says more. And in that more, you said make co-host.
Oh, I see. Make host.
And then I will be able to.
Okay.
You got it? Okay. Let me close that part. Here we are. All right. Okay. I hope you all see it. And I just put that one in the front just because. So that's the photograph that I was talking about. I will just share one of the poems, this first one here, although there are others. This is not one of my photographs. This is a photograph, as you see underneath, by Santi Palacios. And I want to share a little bit of the reasons I really love this photographer. He is a photographer whose primary job is to ride the Open Arms boat that is constantly in the Mediterranean, trying to save immigrant dinghies and different types of boats of the many people that capsize very often. And once they get into Open Arms, what Open Arms does is try to negotiate with different countries around the Mediterranean and the European side to see if they can host them. And sometimes it's very hard. So this is one of Santi Palacios. I want to tell you just a brief story of this photograph. I love the bird on top somehow, and him on the very, very top of, as a migrant, sub-Saharan migrant, on the very top of this lamppost at the border of Melilla, which is one of the two cities that Spain still has in North Africa, and to which many of the migrants try to reach. So the story of this man is simply that at one point the police arrived and they asked all the people that were at the border to come down, and he, instead of coming down, decided to continue going up. And just got into that pole and went to the very top. And the photograph is amazing because unlike other photographs, he is calm. And he is looking, by the way, at that land that now he will not be able to reach. He's actually looking on the side of Melilla, on the side of Spain, towards where he was going, and likely from that point, seeing the Mediterranean also. So I will just read it. Perched. 6 meters high, triple layer fence of metal righteousness, blades of white virtue running its length, spotlights, tall pickets, cameras, high posts, a hazardous border splashed by sea waves and African hopes, awaiting and hiding in makeshift camps, alert to that miracle moment, to the touch and go instant, the razor wire climb, the fast jump onto Europe. And now you, perched, pensive, stretching your life's seconds, never this high, never this view, never so close, above your own dream, atop the world, atop the waves, atop the white men's ways. Not yet ready for the catch, but for wings to surrender into the air, to glide to your freedom, as a petrel or a shag, as a darter or an ibis, as a lark or a sparrow, as the great crown sand grouse. And I will leave it there. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to contribute. I'm going to stop sharing right now. Hold on just 1 minute. There we go.
Thank you so much, Florinda. And I'm so sorry I didn't mention, I should have said in the very beginning about the cover, because this is such an extraordinary cover that gives this book such power. And everybody who has seen it is absolutely stunned by it. The color, the beauty of the water, the mysteriousness of this woman. So thank you so much for in fact, I have asked you, I have begged you to share one of your photographs with us, because I know what a brilliant photographer you are.
There is no time, but anybody who has the book can get it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Barbara Mujica.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. This is a story about two immigrant families that live across the street from each other. And we're just going to meet them at the very beginning of their relationship, but then they get to be friends. When the Sanchez family moved into the house across the street, the one that had been owned by the Shapiros, things went from bad to worse. We lived on a small street with a Spanish name. Half the streets in Los Angeles have Spanish names, near Fairfax Avenue. A casual passerby might miss the mezuzah on the right door post of every house, but the mailman knew the makeup of the neighborhood. On the corner, the Bravermans, then the Langs, the Zimmermans, the Meisners, the Gottliebs, the Weinbergs, the Shapiros, the Goldsteins, the Hurwitzes. We were the Rifkins, Abe, Rose, Leah, my older sister, Amy, that's me, Aaron, and Gail. Mother referred to people by their place on the block. For example, Braverman on the corner bought a new sofa, but they didn't have the color that she wanted. So she had to settle for green. Or else Weinberg across the street told me she was going to start working at the May Company a couple of days a week. Minkoff around the block is going to babysit her kids. Or else Lang by Braverman has to have her ovaries removed. Sometimes the name would disappear altogether, as in, around the corner called me this afternoon. She says her Barbara is going with across the street by Meisner to the prom. Next door says he got into Berkeley. It was up to the listener to figure out that he referred to Carl, the son of Jill and Ralph Gottlieb, who lived next to Meisner across the street. Mom loved the neighborhood and was friendly with all the women up and down the street. She walked to the synagogue with them on Friday night, even though she didn't care for what she called all that religious rigmarole and didn't believe half of what the rabbi said. It was a cohesive group. If Mrs. Goldstein was sick, Mrs. Lang would cook for her family. If Mr. Zimmerman's car broke down, Mrs. Rabinowitz would drive her kids to school. Mom did for everyone, and everyone was welcome in our house. These were people who had lived through situations in which, if you didn't stick together, you might not survive. And so they helped each other gladly, without being asked, and without exacting compensation. The news that Esther and Morris Shapiro were selling their house had surprised no one. Esther and Morris had lived in the neighborhood for ages. In fact, they had been among the first Jewish residents, having moved in just when the area was beginning to turn from Irish. But now they were older, and the house had gotten to be too big for Esther, who had a heart condition. The Shapiro's only daughter had graduated college and married a chiropractor. Shana Madel, bless her. The young couple now had a child of their own and a place in Santa Monica, and so Esther and Morris had decided that there was no point in hanging onto a house that had begun to be a burden. The stucco walls were cracking, the wiring was in need of repair, the flagstones in the patio had grass growing between them, and honeysuckle was overgrowing the roses. The Shapiros put their house on the market and added their names to the waiting list at Park La Brea Towers, an apartment complex for seniors. 8 months later, the Sanchez family, 11 kids, 3 dogs, 2 parents, and a grandmother, were moving in. They had the most disorderly, dilapidated array of belongings that anyone on our street had ever seen. Sofas and chairs that didn't match, phony Baroque lamps and tables with cherubs and flowers stamped all over, paintings on black velvet of bullfighters in bright colors, broken down bicycles that had obviously been passed from one child to the next, and crucifixes. Crucifixes! Mom stood at the living room window and wept. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful writing. Next, we have Claudia Bernalillo.
And Claudia, you too, if you want to share the screen, you
Yes,
can.
I will see. I hope so. Let's see. Host disabled participant. You have to do for me what you did for me.
Yeah, yes, okay, here it is.
Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for being here, and Dominica and Roxana, thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this anthology. The piece I wrote for this book is entitled La Bestia, the Beast, and it refers to the creation of a community-based and collaborative mural painted by undocumented, unaccompanied Central American minors who were at the time incarcerated in a maximum security prison in the United States. So as you see, the mural presents a train that the artist called the Beast. This represents the train that the Central American miners and older people too take from the south of Mexico, from Arriaga or Ixtapec, all the way to the north to the Mexican United States border. There is not only one train, there are many trains, but for the Latin American community, the Central American migrants, it's always the Beast, because the journey is very dangerous, very perilous. Many people make it, many not. So as you see, the mural contains a number of windows. Each of the windows tell a story. So I'm going to tell the story of window number 2. A 16-year-old Mexican boy from Michoacan was visiting his cousin from her mother's side. He knew that this older cousin had been involved in some shady business of which neither he nor his family ever talked about. They were in a festive mood when they decided to go to a nearby bar for beers and some music. The Michoacan boy could not remember where exactly the armed men came from. It could have not been from the main entrance of the building because he was facing that direction and saw no one blowing up the door. The shooting was so loud and so fast that the only thing he tried and was unable to do was to hide under a table. He was unable to locate his cousin. He was taken by 2 men into a car. His head was covered with a hood that impeded him to see where he was taken to. The cousin and the Michoacan boy were pushed out to the cars, beaten badly with metal rods. The cousin, now on his knees, was asking for forgiveness. He had nothing to do with the death of one of the cartel members. The Michoacan boy was petrified by fear. He could hardly feel the burning pain of a sharp knife cutting his upper torso. There was a solid sound that he had never heard before. His cousin was shot in the abdomen while on his knees. The Michoacan boy had never seen the exploded insides of a person. For incomprehensible associations, he thought that it looked like a bloody soup. The body of his cousin he never saw again. The men took the Michoacan boy to a dilapidated, disgusting, smelly latrine. The floor was earth. He dug out his way out during the night. No one saw him running and crying. Somehow he got to Tijuana. He was in hiding for 3 weeks until he decided to cross the US-Mexico border. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That is so powerful. If you could remake me the host.
How do I do that?
You just press, you go through the 3 dots under my name and you say make host. And now next we're going to hear from Kenneth Hadda. Kenneth?
Hi, I'm here. Thank
Hi.
you, everybody, for your stories are very moving, and I'm really honored to be part of this. And thanks for putting together such a great program today. I'm in Oklahoma, and the poem I'm going to read is titled Refugee, and it's a composite of feelings I have been having for the last several years. It's from the perspective, or perhaps the frustration is from the perspective of family that immigrated, 3-4 generations ago, like so many in America did. And then they become part of the majority, and they forget that they were a migrant family once upon a time, and they join the power culture, which is opposing immigrants coming in. And then just hearing about it, of course, continuously on the news. And it's always an attempt, I wrote quite a few refugee poems, just an attempt to put a face to an abstract story on the news. So the title is simply Refugee. A little girl sleeps on the ground. Her mother's worry is her worry now. Her hunger is her mother's hunger. Her brother and father are ghosts remembered before the ground swabs her tears unswallowed. A voice throbs within. Home. Where? Not here. Somewhere. Does she understand her fate? She who embodies the hate of others, brings Republicans frothing into weird, cowardly alliance with indifferent churchgoers who once again mispledge their allegiance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That was wonderful. I also noticed that Matt Murray was able to join us. Thank you, Matt. Would you like to share?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Great.
Yes.
I'd like to share, first introduce myself. I'm Matthew Murray. I'm logging in from Illinois. And I noticed you said in Oklahoma City, it's windy and chilly, and it's chilly here too. I'm going to read one poem, and it was inspired by a lovely news article 2 years ago of a family of Eritrean refugees who were welcomed into Canada. And of course, 2 years ago, not many families were being welcomed into the United States. And so if I could share the screen, I'd like to do that. So I'm going to have to ask someone do the same thing where I'm made host. And I'm going to show the video. It's just a very short little 40-second video. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. And this poem is called Refugee Snow. Not shovels, not the dread skid to the ditch, not even salt, no, just childish rejoice for what's free, falling and frozen, yet floats like luck's feathers. Long flight from bad to better, hunger to dinner, cot to bed and comforter. It's contagious, this spontaneous jump, jump, run and twirl, this smiles up to taste and palms out to catch the sky falling. Fluffed tatters of icy white that turn on touching skin to a blessing of water. That's all. Thank you. Let's see, I think I have to make you the
host again. Thank you so much. Wow, that video was so beautiful and moving.
And let me mute myself.
I think it's my turn now to introduce Dominica.
All right, I will read a few passages from my play that is included in the volume. It's a bilingual play called Bienvenue à la jungle de Calais, Welcome to the Jungle of Calais. And it is inspired by stories of refugees in the former camp of Calais, France. I wrote this last year while I was in southern France in an artist residency. And the play is written with a chorus, sort of similar to the Greek chorus. So I'll read the passages that are the chorus passages, since there are many characters. We all lost someone dear. Nous avons tous perdu quelqu'un de très cher. You have your daughter. Il te reste toujours ta fille. You couldn't have done any better. Tu n'aurais pas pu faire mieux. The sea is fierce. La mer est féroce, impitoyable. You survived. Vous avez survécu. With Amina. Amina et toi, toutes les deux. The sea spared you two. La mer vous a épargné. The green sea, la mer verte. The yellow sea, la mer jaune. The red sea, la mer rouge du sang de nos bien-aimés. The Red Sea full of the blood of our loved ones, the bodies of our loved ones, les corps de nos bien-aimés, swallowed by the sea, avalés par la mer, by the waves, par les vagues, the red waves, les vagues rouges, the green waves, les vagues vertes, the black waves, les vagues noires. On va partir dès l'aube, we will leave at dawn. On va partir sur les grands chemins. We will leave on the big highways, on the smaller roads, on the sea, sur la mer, sur la Manche. On va traverser, we'll cross the channel, we'll cross the boat we made, we'll cross in the boat we made. On va traverser dans le canot qu'on a fait. It's only 82 kilometers. We can sail 82 kilometers. If others have done it, so can we. On va le faire, d'autres l'ont fait, nous aussi pouvons le faire. We row the dinghy for hours. On rame le canot pendant des heures. In the rough waters, dans les eaux périlleuses, in the dangerous waves, dans les vagues dangereuses. It's stormy, it's rough, c'est orageux, c'est dur. The boat almost turns over. La barque se renverse presque. We hold on, on s'y tient. We hold on tight, on s'y accroche. We're close, on est si près. So close, si près, almost there, presque là. A few more meters, encore quelques mètres. Amina loses a shoe. Amina perd un soulier. Abrisham starts vomiting. Abrisham commence à vomir. Karim is holding Farid. Karam embrasse Farid. It's almost like a long farewell. C'est comme un long adieu. Nasrin is shaking in her sleep. Nasrin tremble dans son sommeil. Thank you. And now I will introduce Roxana. She will read to us from her.
Thank you, everyone. Before I do my spiel a little bit here, I just wanted to point out that there are like other amazing contributions, and we invite you to please through the anthology and read it. I know Khaled wanted to be here, but I guess he was not able to join us. And his photography is just also very beautiful, just like all the other contributions. So I'll speak very briefly about one of the poems that I included. As a grad student, I spent quite a few years studying motherhood in the context of two realities. One of them was the communist era that I was born into, with its reproductive legislation that created catastrophe. And the second one, the politicization of giving birth in the United States. So after spending a long time reading about it and doing research and being horrified, who knew I was going to become a mother myself? And that made me think about things differently. I was completely unprepared for this, and it's from this background. It also really feeds from the amazing poetry that I read daily and inspires me. I have to speak about the experimental form of the poem. And in fact, one of our contributors, Philip Matres, who cannot be here today, uses experiment and plays with form in his last couple of books. I also want to acknowledge the beautiful poetry on motherhood and ethnicity that is written by Julia Kolchinsky-Dasbach. And so here it goes. It's called Bleat, and it's written as a definition poem. Noun, the characteristic utterance of goats or sheep, a sound similar to their cry. My grandfather raised 2 gray goats. The goats had earrings shaped like knives to plot ancestry. I was born during that terrible drought, a meatmonger, a mouse atoning for its hunger. 2. Animals had to prove their usefulness, unbutton their bodies for the country like women their wombs. My mother was like a chicken full of eggs. Every year she'd cannonball one, catch it before it hatched, the cleaver plunking to cut all vessels before sunrise. 2 survived. I became a sea song. My body became a shark with silver teeth harpooned into the shore, but the country did not want a rotten girl. Bleated, bleating, bleats, verb. 1. To cry yourself to sleep on a board or a plane, on a boat or a plane, excuse me. Border benches are not all painted yellow. I wanted everyone to drown inside me. I was so lonely, I wanted to tickle my tongue. According to my mother, it was best to find a man soon, have my breasts bitten into like plums. From the other side of the ocean, I revisited its shoreline. The sea was almost dry. I found dregs of people, dry like shed skin. They came afloat like men of war. 2. To whine when you cannot hold the grief in. I can only hold my breath for a little while. I cannot swim well. At some point, I forgot the language. Words became dumb butterflies. At some point, I rerouted my veins. They had to reach a safe place. At some point. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to invite anybody else who's not on our list who has contributed something in this anthology and would like to share before we open it up for Q&A.
I think that's it. So now we open it to questions, right? If any of you have questions, comments, we have a little time. Anybody wants to say anything or comment?
I think
have a
Olga,
question.
I think Olga has a question. It said in chat.
Okay, go ahead.
Catalina, you or me? We're talking over each other. I am fascinated by a lot here. I mean, there's just such intense and powerful emotion distilled across all these genres. So thank you so much. I'm wondering about one particular question that I guess I've been pondering, and it was brought to me especially through the work of Dominika, listening to both English and French entwined. And I'm wondering what folks think about if you identify squarely on the side of using multilingualism and including that in the English or Englishes that we use, or if you believe a little bit more in translation and bringing all of that, which requires a certain kind of perhaps smoothing out. Those are two things that I'm trying to kind of incorporate both in my work, but I'm beginning to see that they're somewhat very different pursuits. So just wondering if anybody has any thoughts, if that's something that's been brewing on your mind. Thank you.
I think there is a beauty in listening to languages, and even if we don't understand sometimes, I think the beauty, as far as I'm concerned, is just listening to sounds, foreign sounds. They really enrich me. And hearing Dominika, obviously I could understand certain words, but your question, Christina, is definitely provocative, because when I came here to the United States, I translate everything, and now it's I miss hearing those foreign sounds because all I hear is American English. So I would love to see a return to bilingualism and the opportunity to hear as many foreign sounds as possible.
Our collection has several languages: French, Spanish, and Romanian, 3. But I have welcomed everything that is a polyglossia, not just bilingualism, but polyglossia. I think Jasmine would like to say something.
So I was just thinking about how when I use a lot of Persian in my books, because I feel like there are some things that just I cannot convey in English. They just have a certain flavor for me. And having grown up reading a lot of writers who did work in foreign languages, it was so astonishing to me when I got a review from another Iranian writer who felt like it was a way of, it was sort of like adding a garnish and it was pandering to Americans. I just thought that was so interesting, and maybe only something that another Iranian would say to me, that to me something that was, I can't trace back all the psychology of it, but I was trying to express something authentic, and then the assault was basically you're being inauthentic in rendering these words in English. So I just wanted to share that, and I was thinking about that episode and how sometimes it's the people within our own communities who are policing these boundaries most strenuously.
Yeah, I was actually told to do this by multiple professors who were actually American, and I was a new immigrant in college, and they always said things like, why do you have to call them grandma and grandpa? Why don't you do the babushka thing? And I was like, well, first off, it's babushka, and second off, I wanted to fit in. And now that I do fit in, and it's been almost 30 years, it's very interesting to me how now that's coming back in fashion. I'm seeing themed anthologies and issues that have to do with multilingualism. If anybody's interested, there's a journal called Mantis out of Stanford, I want to say, that has a themed issue, a call for submissions now. So it's interesting how these things kind of come back, and I think they have to do with politics of diversity and what they mean, and kind of like, I think what your friend or associate, colleague, acquaintance may have meant is you're fitting into that paradigm of things, which I absolutely kind of get in a way, but also you were doing you, and I absolutely bring in Russian into my stuff, as you saw, or translations of Russian. So that stood out, but also for Dominica's stuff, I really heard the textures of French and English working in such an interesting lattice or interspersion, where the French had that end stressed pattern that was working very nicely against English, where it was sort of weaker stress, and they alternated with such great texture. So I feel like a lot of what people are saying has to do with the sounds of these languages. And so it's such a wonderful thing that you had this event, and may there be more where they can be heard. Because for me, Russian is a different alphabet and folks aren't able to read it. And so they feel shut out. But, I love that multimedia is kind of helping us bring these languages forth.
Yeah, if I may, I don't know if you can hear me. I've got a little sound problem here. Thank you very much for a wonderful anthology. I think it's absolutely fabulous that you did this. On the question of languages, I think it's crucial that there is this possibility of layering a message of voices on the move through languages that are not exactly translatable. Because it was very obvious in what Dominika has read. French and English are not perfectly translatable into each other, and in fact, no languages are. So, and so is the status of any immigrant or refugee in a country of adoption. Yeah, there's no perfect translation. But that's exactly the point. That's exactly why people are writing about being refugees and migrating and moving and being nomads. Yeah, that's the whole fun of it, being on the move and experiencing languages. So thank you very much. This is a great achievement, and I'd like to congratulate all of you.
Maybe just to add to this, that not just the language itself, but the discourse, writing in the way in which like Romanians would write, even though I use the English language. Oftentimes I find myself using extremely long-winded phrases and sentences and things like that. And even, in graduate school, perhaps that was not the best choice always, but it's part of me, and at least in my creative writing, I kind of want to embrace it.
Can I just add one thing, Dominika? Yeah.
Absolutely, please do. Go ahead.
Conversation of the language. I think it was a great point that you made. Where is she? Jasmine, right there. This whole thing about people not understanding what you're trying to do. And I think what we can never forget is that our experiences are very unique and very different from those who did not move. Very different from those who stayed. and it is a completely different world. So I don't know if what Jasmine mentioned came from a person who never moved, but as I think many of you would agree, we need to remember that the experience of being whatever we are, a nomad and a migrant, an immigrant and exiled or whatever, it's really a unique one, and we cannot expect people to understand. Well, we hope everybody will understand, but we need to understand that the people who stayed sometimes may not understand why we use our language the way we do, or why we mix them, or why we need to mix them, and what means to us in particular moments, because they have never lived those experiences of being ripped apart between two places. So, and language is that.
Well, what I would like to say is that for us writers, I'm glad that this anthology is also replete with such beautiful visual art, photography, as well as some speaking of languages, drawings. It's like I have a complete blockage of using any language. Then Claudia's beautiful work that she did with the students. For writers and creative writers and poets, language is our tool of expression, and moving into a different, having the uprooting from our original, from our native countries and languages is quite a traumatic experience, but also it offers great opportunities for reinventing oneself. And yes, I know what you mean, Jasmine. I have had so many different condescending and if not insulting comments of all kinds, including by editors from important presses who congratulated my English, how good my English is. That's one of the worst, when somebody tells you, but your English is so good. Yes, thank you. But it is a very mixed and traumatic and layered and complex bag. This bag of leaving one's language and creating in another one, and it has its joys and also its profound melancholy. And I think all those of us who write in a language that is a language of our adoption, we bring something of our native languages into English in this case. That is maybe a different voice, a different tonality, rhythm.
I have a question for the editors of the anthology, with my thanks. Sorry, I think this is my third utterance in this conversation, but I'm a big fan of this crowd. It feels so good to be surrounded by like-minded others and such talented others. So this is an event that, is tied to an anthology that will find homes in many, many hands, hopefully. Are there sort of iterative or repetitive futures for this kind of undertaking to establish a community of folks who are immigrants and first generation Americans? There's such good work being created, and yet there isn't an equivalent of, say, Kave Kanam for Black folks in this country, or Condiment for Asian Americans. I used to run, up until COVID, a series called From Across the Waters in Philadelphia with Julia Dasbach. And it was a wonderful thing to have, but also very local and limited. And now that we're all stuck in very different places, it would be a lovely thing to maintain solidarity, because these efforts are just kind of piecemeal. And so I'm wondering if there's anything that comes to mind for anybody.
Olga, such a great question. And Dominica and I have been thinking about this and have been trying to promote this kind of writing, this kind of art. Dominica can speak more about what she's been engaged with over the summer with playwrights and artists. But it takes a fantastic planner to orchestrate something bigger than this. And I'm sure leading your efforts in Philadelphia. I can't imagine, you know, what this means. Perhaps an iteration of Voices on the Move can be something that we're open for conversation. We would love to spread the word. When we started this and we thought of venues for promoting the intent of the anthology, that was for me a big stumbling block because I really didn't know how to approach it, but eventually, you know, people were very helpful and they kind of like helped spread the word, which was amazing. So a platform, you know, that is maybe established or known or marketed, you know, would be really amazing.
Well, one thing that I am urging you all, and I will do it myself, those of you who are educators, is to teach this collection. I will do it in the winter. And that is one way of transmitting it and, you know, passing it on and opening it up to younger generations. So that is a very productive way of enlarging this community. Another way is really what I've done with previous collections, and I think Roxanna and I could well do this too, is just share it and send it to a lot of other non-academic environments and places. Like we have already made the list, right? And we're working on this with Robert, museums, cultural centers, for this to be out there. I even had an idea of finding a way of sending it to people in detention centers. I'm thinking, imagine, but Claudia, maybe you can give us an idea of how logistically that would be possible. But I'm thinking, imagine for someone who is so sad, so lost, so lonely and alienated, and to receive the gift of a book that speaks to them. And it's a real question that I'm posing. And if anybody has an idea of how to do this, I think I would be very glad to pay of my own to buy a whole bunch of books and make a package and send them to different detention centers, frankly, and the refugee camps.
Maybe nonprofits.
And right, yeah. Yes, Claudia.
I think that is a fantastic idea. There's a lot of red tape to communicate with, at least to communicate with the maximum security prisons that I have worked in. It's not easy to give anyone an address, but what I'll be very glad to do is converse with people with whom I have worked inside the prison and ask them if they would be willing to interact with you both. I think that is a fantastic idea because they have a lot of time that is punishing, you know, to have a time that is not used in a proactive way. So I think that is wonderful. I'll be glad to do that.
All right.
I'll communicate with you both.
Yes. And Robert, maybe Robert, you would like to say a few things in closing?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you once again. I was really privileged to be able to join this. It's really, I've really enjoyed listening to people's contributions. So, but I'd just like to thank everybody again for their contributions to the book. And it's amazing to be able to see you across the ocean like this and across the time zones. So thanks very much again.
Robert, I'm sorry to, I wonder if you could tell us a few, any news about how the book is selling in the UK?
Oh, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit then.
Yes,
sorry.
If you could let us know if you have any information, news as of now about how the book is selling worldwide and in the UK.
It seems to be mostly the USA and the UK the sales are coming from. And I'm very pleased with it so far. It's only about a month from publication, and it's doing quite well actually. I'm quite pleased with it. It seems to be the printed copies seems to be the people are buying most, not so much the ebooks. But personally, I always prefer the tactile nature of the book. I think it's a much nicer thing to hold, whereas the ebook is perhaps less of an experience. So maybe other people feel the same way. Really, they prefer to have the printed book.
Mhm.
I don't know what you feel about that. Really,
Can I
whether
say
you all
something?
prefer.
I have to say something. Dominica and I were discussing that the other day, that the book, Robert, is not only beautiful, but the feel of it. The cover, the tactile part is so velvety
Yeah.
that I don't know what you call this type of material, but it's velvety. And I love
Yeah.
holding it. It doesn't feel like other books.
And
No,
also, have you noticed all how Robert played with the fonts? How beautiful!
Oh,
There is a change in fonts. There is between the sections. He put beautiful visuals. It's just a remarkable book.
Oh, thank you. I tried, very hard with the cover. I love seeing people hold the book, because I've done this on other books before. People stroke the book. They love holding it. So I think it's the lamination on the cover is what it's about, and I think people like that. And I did try very hard with the fonts, because I wanted the distinction between the different parts of everybody's work to stand out. So I thought the poems, I wanted to look different from the essays, and the plays, I wanted to be able to introduce different styles and things into that. And so I'm pleased that people like that. I think it's really, really good. Really happy about that.
I guess the materiality of the book is something that should be related to the materiality of changing places, really. So migration is something very real, isn't it? I think touching the book, being able to get a book out rather than just an electronic text, is a very big achievement when we talk about refugee literature, right? So
That's a very good point.
Yeah, it should thank
immigration. If the immigrant experience is in the body, it's a physical experience. Anybody else would like to say anything more? If not, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. I think this was such a soulful and powerful and uplifting event, and truly I felt like we have created a community of artists, of like-minded spirits and souls. And
yes, absolutely. I also want to say thank you so much. We will make this video available so you can post it on your social media. We really appreciate the fact that you worked with us and you shared your work, and we look forward to future projects and collaboration.
yes, share, talk it up, talk about it to everybody you know. Thank you all, and I hope you all are well where you are, and are keeping safe and sane of body and mind.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.